Let me say something upfront before we get into this. When I use the word loophole in the title, I don't mean anything sneaky or obscure or on the edge of legality. Everything we're going to talk about today is built directly into the Social Security system. These are strategies that Congress designed and the SSA administers. They exist on purpose. The problem is, they're complicated, they're buried in the rules, and the Social Security Administration itself doesn't sit you down and walk you through them. You have to know to ask. And most people, and honestly, a lot of financial advisors, don't. I'm Melanie Kent, Social Security Specialist, and today we're going to walk through 3 strategies that most married couples and a lot of divorced people have never heard of. By the end of this, you're going to see your Social Security picture differently. Let's get into it. Start with the most common mistake I see married couples make, and I see it constantly. They think about Social Security as 2 separate individual decisions. Tom looks at his projected benefit and thinks about when Tom should file. Linda looks at hers and thinks about when Linda should file. They both pick an age, they compare notes, and they call it a plan. That is not a plan. That's 2 individual decisions made in parallel. And when you make it that way, you almost always leave significant money on the table. Social Security for married couples is a household strategy, not 2 individual ones. The decisions interact with each other in ways that aren't obvious. And when you coordinate them properly, the difference over a lifetime can run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's the core concept that makes everything else make sense. When one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse keeps the higher of the 2 Social Security benefits. The lower one goes away. This means the higher earner's benefit, whatever it is when they're gone, becomes the income that surviving spouse lives on, potentially for a decade or 2 or more. That one fact should reshape every conversation a married couple has about Social Security filing strategy, because it means the higher earner's decision isn't just about them. It's about what the surviving spouse has to live on for years after they're gone. And this is where most couples are making a very costly mistake. The first strategy is built directly from that survivor benefit mechanic. The higher earner should almost always delay as long as financially possible, ideally to 70, because doing so maximizes the survivor benefit that the lower earning spouse will eventually receive. Here's what the SSA confirms. A surviving spouse who has reached their full retirement age receives 100% of whatever the deceased spouse was collecting at the time of death. So if the higher earner waited to 70 and was receiving $3,800 a month, that $3,800 becomes the survivor's benefit. If that higher earner had filed at 62 instead and was receiving $2,400, that's what the survivor gets, for life, until their own death. The difference between those 2 outcomes isn't $1,400 a month. Over a 15-year survivorship, it's more than $250,000. Over 20 years, it's closer to $340,000. And here's the part that's genuinely important and gets lost in most conversations. Delaying the higher earner's benefit to 70 doesn't mean the lower earning spouse has to wait too. They can file on their own record earlier, even at 62 if the math supports it, which brings income into the household while the higher earner's benefit is still growing at 8% per year. Tom and Linda are a good example of this. Tom is the higher earner. Linda earned significantly less over her career. If they both file at 67, they both get their full individual benefits. Fine. But if Tom delays to 70 while Linda files at 65 on her own record, 2 things happen. First, household income still starts flowing through Linda's benefit at 65. Second, Tom's benefit grows by an additional 24% over those 3 years. And when one of them eventually passes, the survivor receives that larger amount. This is the core of married couple Social Security strategy. The higher earner delays, the lower earner fills the income gap in the meantime. You're essentially running a bridge strategy using the lower earner's benefit. The second thing, and this surprises almost everyone when they hear it the first time, the spousal benefit has a ceiling that doesn't grow the way you might think. Here's what people assume. If my spouse waits longer, my spousal benefit gets bigger too. That is not how it works. The spousal benefit is capped at 50% of the higher earner's primary insurance amount, meaning their benefit at their full retirement age. It doesn't grow if they delay past full retirement age. Tom waiting until 70 does not increase Linda's spousal benefit beyond 50% of what Tom would have gotten at 67. So Linda claiming spousal benefits rather than her own record only makes sense if 50% of Tom's full retirement age benefit is higher than Linda's own benefit at whatever age she files. And there's a second rule that surprises people. Tom has to be actively receiving his own benefit before Linda can claim spousal benefits on his record. She can't claim spousal while he's still delaying. The exception is if they're divorced. But for a current married couple, the higher earner has to have filed first. This creates an important planning question. If Tom wants to delay to 70 and Linda wants to claim spousal benefits on his record, she has to wait until he files. That's a coordination decision that needs to happen years before retirement, not the week before. Drop this in the comments. Did you know the spousal benefit doesn't grow if your spouse delays past full retirement age? I ask this question in workshops regularly, and the answer is almost always no. It's one of the most common misconceptions in this whole system. The third strategy is specifically for survivor situations, and it's one that can make a substantial difference in lifetime income for widows and widowers. When someone passes away, their surviving spouse has a planning opportunity that most people don't realize exists. It's called switching benefits. And unlike most things in Social Security, survivor benefits are exempt from what's called deemed filing. Here's what deemed filing means for regular retirement benefits. When you file for your own Social Security retirement benefit, you're automatically also deemed to have filed for any spousal benefit you're entitled to. You can't choose one over the other. You get whichever is higher, and that's it. Survivor benefits work differently. They're exempt from deemed filing, which means a widow or widower can file for survivor benefits first, collect those while their own retirement benefit continues to grow, up to age 70, and then switch to their own benefit if and when it becomes larger. Or they can go the other direction, file for their own retirement benefit first while letting the survivor benefit sit, and then switch to the survivor benefit later if that becomes the higher amount. The SSA confirms this directly on their website. You can start with survivor benefits and then change to your retirement benefit at 70 when that payment is highest. Let me show you what this looks like in practice with Linda's situation. But now, in a scenario where Tom passes away before either of them has filed. Linda is 62. Tom has passed. Tom's projected full retirement age benefit was $3,000 a month. Linda's own projected benefit at 70 would be $2,100 a month. Option 1. Linda files for survivor benefits now at 62. She receives 71.5% of Tom's full retirement benefit, about $2,145 a month. She collects that for 8 years. At 70, she evaluates whether to switch to her own benefit of $2,100. In this case, Tom's survivor amount at her FRA would have been $3,000, so she'd want to stay on the survivor benefit at FRA. But if her own benefit at 70 would be higher, she could switch. Option 2. Linda files for her own reduced retirement benefit at 62, say $1,470 a month, and defers the survivor benefit until her survivor full retirement age, when she'd receive 100% of Tom's benefit, the full $3,000. Depending on her own benefit growth, this could produce more lifetime income if she lives long enough. Which option is better depends on the specific numbers: her age, both benefit amounts, and her life expectancy. But the key point is that both options exist, and most widows walking into a Social Security office don't know they have a choice. They're told what they're eligible for right now, and they take it. If you find yourself in this situation or planning for the possibility, understanding that you can switch between survivor and your own retirement benefit, and that you can claim survivor benefits as early as 60, not 62, gives you options that can make a meaningful difference. There's also a strategy that applies to divorced people, and this one affects more people than you'd think. If you were married for at least 10 years and then divorced, you may be eligible for Social Security benefits based on your ex-spouse's earnings record. This is available even if your ex is remarried. Claiming on your ex's record does not reduce their benefit. It does not affect their current spouse's benefit. It comes from a separate pool. To qualify, you need to be unmarried yourself, at least 62, and your own benefit must be lower than what you'd receive based on your ex's record. You can receive up to 50% of your ex's full retirement age benefit, the same spousal benefit calculation. One more important difference from the married spousal rule: if you've been divorced for at least 2 years, you don't have to wait for your ex to file. You can claim on their record as soon as you're eligible, even if they haven't started their own benefits yet. According to Nationwide Retirement Institute's 2025 Social Security survey, about 50% of adults incorrectly believe that divorced people are not eligible for benefits based on an ex-spouse's record. That means half the population is potentially walking away from income they've already earned, in a sense, through years of marriage. Subscribe if you find this useful. We cover this kind of detail every week because this is exactly the information that makes a real difference in retirement income, and it's almost never explained clearly. Let's bring Tom and Linda back for a moment and look at their coordinated picture. Tom's full retirement age benefit at 67 would be $3,200 a month. Linda's at 67 would be $1,400. If they both file at 67, their combined household income is $4,600 a month. If one of them passes, the survivor gets $3,200. Now, the coordinated strategy. Linda files at 65 on her own record. She gets about $1,250 a month, a modest reduction for filing 2 years early. Tom delays to 70. His benefit grows to about $3,970 a month. Their combined income from 70 onward is $5,220 a month, $620 more per month than the everyone files at 67 version. More importantly, when one of them passes, the survivor receives $3,970 a month instead of $3,200. Over a 15-year survivorship, that's a difference of more than $137,000. All of that from timing. Tom and Linda didn't discover a secret. They didn't use a loophole in any sneaky sense. They just understood how the system actually works and made decisions that fit together instead of running them independently. 3 things to walk away with today. If you're married and the higher earner is seriously considering delaying Social Security, even to 67, not necessarily 70, model what that does to the survivor benefit before you make the call. That number often changes the decision. If you're a widow or widower and you haven't looked at the option of filing for one benefit now and switching to the other later, call the SSA at 800-7721-213 and ask specifically about your options. Don't just take whatever they offer you first. Ask about the switch strategy. And if you were married for 10 or more years and are now divorced, go to ssa.gov and look at what you might be eligible for on your ex's record. You may have benefits sitting there you've never touched. What's the piece from today that you hadn't heard before? The spousal benefit ceiling, the survivor switch strategy, or the divorced spouse rules? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. See you tomorrow.